Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks everyone for coming. As you can see, we are missing. Yep, got it. We are missing Chairman McGlashan this evening, as well as Lou Tremaine from Fairfax, but appreciate everybody else coming so we could proceed with the meeting. Before we get to the agenda items, let's open it up for public open time. And I am going to be a little bit of a stickler on time tonight because we have a long agenda, and I'm hoping to adjourn by 10:30 or 11 if we can swing it. Maybe sooner. Items not on the agenda. Hi, Ed.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ed Maitland, and I live in Novato. And surprisingly enough, I am a subscriber to Deep Green, and very pleased with your service. Thank you very much. I live outside the city boundaries, so the City Council's refusal to allow choice within those boundaries didn't apply to me. I'm also co-chair of the Energy Climate Committee of Sierra Club, California. And we have in gestation a campaign. It's called California Clean Energy Solutions. And it's all about localization, community power, homegrown renewable power in the cities and counties. And CCAs are a very important part of this. And so the fate of MEA is very important to us. Sierra Club California is a party to 3 proceedings in the CPUC. One of those proceedings is the PG&E rate case, and we are defending, Sierra Club California is defending MEA's interests and CCA's interests as best we can. We're interested in coordinating as closely as possible with MEA on the tactics in this proceeding. The chief lawyer for Sierra Club is Andy Katz. He's also the #1 volunteer in the whole state. He chairs the executive committee of the Sierra Club of California. We're also in the long-term procurement proceeding, and PG&E there is trying to do you harm. And we're also in the Renewable Portfolio Standard feed-in tariff proceeding. So I just wanted to mention this as an ally for you, and coordination is of the essence. Now, we're all in Sierra Club, California right now, we're all about distributed power. And there's 2 ways a CCA can get to distributed power. One is a piecemeal, project by project, dragged out, economically unfeasible approach.
At about 1 more minute.
Thank you. And the other is a integrated, bundled, economically viable plan that locks in a process rather than individual little projects. And we think that's very important because the composition, the political composition is of your body is always up to grabs. And if we can lock in a process by which distributed power can go forward, you'll make make MEA less vulnerable to political change down the line. So I have an article that our committee authored. I will be glad to send it to you, Sean, or to Dawn, or anybody for circulation to your members.
All of the above would be great. Charles?
And it's on renewable community power and its advantages, not only for CCAs, but for all communities in California. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else here for public open time before we get to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, before we move to the director's report, there is an item on the agenda this evening that when the executive committee met, I guess it was a week or so ago, we had recommended that item 8, LGS RGS recommended changes to the employment contract be continued, pulled for tonight and continued to the next meeting, because there are a number of items on there that we feel warrant further research and discussion. So for anyone who came this evening to deal with or to hear about item 8, unfortunately, I don't believe that we'll be taking that up. Do I need to have a motion to have that agenda item removed at this point? Or continued?
Actually, the rest of the board would be fine.
Okay. Do I hear any opposition to continue the item? Okay, so item 8 is officially off the agenda for tonight's meeting. Okay, let's go to Dawn.
So I have just a couple of things this evening. The first thing is I wanted to report on the California ISO conference, which I attended a couple of weeks ago. It was a very interesting conference, a lot of focus on greenhouse gas reductions and how entities in California can comply with state mandates. There was also an interesting presentation from the equivalent of the ISO in Spain, and they spoke a lot about how they're handling intermittent renewable resources that they have to manage on the grid. They deal with about 40% renewable, intermittent renewables on a day-to-day basis, and so balancing those out is a challenge, and they talked about how they're able to handle that through some pretty careful monitoring, and also in some cases they do require curtailment of renewable production in order to maintain grid stability. So that was interesting to hear about. I got the feeling that the ISO is going to be interested in moving that direction as we get more renewables onto our grid. So wanted to report on that. The second item is there's going to be a hearing held next week by Senator Mark Leno, and it's going to be held actually right here in these council chambers. It's to discuss the Community Choice Aggregation Act. Where are we now? That's what it's called. It's going to be from 10 to 12 on Tuesday, November 9th. And there are going to be a couple of panels. The first panel is going to include local CCA representatives. I'm going to be on the panel with Mike Campbell from San Francisco, Dave Orth from San Joaquin JPA, and Renata Brillinger from Sonoma County. Then the second panel is going to include our Chair McGlashan, as well as representatives from San Francisco, Ross Mercarimi, Nancy Miller from San Francisco LAFCO, and our regulatory attorney, Dan Douglas, has been asked to participate in that panel. So the public is welcome to attend. We're going to be talking about what sorts of challenges we faced. We've been asked to provide a lot of information on the barriers that we faced over the last year getting up and running, and what types of challenges we may be continuing to face in implementing the CCA Act. So encourage everyone to come to that if you're available and interested. The next item I wanted to report on is just a couple of updates related to our internal operations between MEA and PG&E. We've been continuing to address issues as we move along. We've been able to have the bundled rates suppressed on about 75% of the bills that are going out. This change should be going into effect in mid-November, so we'll be looking for that to make sure it happens. Unfortunately, the remaining 25% of customers will not have the bundled rates suppressed until as early as March. So we're still working to see if we can get that to move along any more quickly. We have another issue that has come up where we are not being notified of which customers are on care rates anymore. And that obviously is a problem because we want to be providing comparable rates for those customers. So that's an issue that we've been taking up with the CPUC recently. And in general terms, we've been working with the CPUC to see if we might be able to develop some type of code of conduct that could help address these issues that continue to come up related to operations. But I will say that overall things are moving along much better, and the issues that we're addressing affect a smaller portion of the customer base. Nonetheless, we do want to get them addressed as expeditiously as we can. The last item I wanted to report on is there's been some discussion with board members about having a holiday party sometime in December, and I was asked to pose the question to the board and find out if folks were interested in having something at our office or off-site or in a home, or and what time of day or what time of the month is preferred. And so if there are any responses or any direction from your board, that would be helpful in us organizing something.
We have no budget.
Right.
Be clear about that. Yeah.
No budget. We were thinking potluck, possibly. Yeah.
A digital a digital holiday party.
Well, we could do that too, yeah.
I'm all up for a potluck. I don't know who's home or where, but I'm fine to bring something.
Okay. Okay, very good. That's all that I have.
Any questions? Okay, any members of the public on the interim director's report? Okay, moving on to consent calendar. I'd like a motion to approve consent, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Dick abstains. Okay. All right, public comment on this item?
I'm proposing a correction in the minutes. Is the appropriate time to do so?
Yep.
My name is Charles Schultz. I'm representing Local Power, and in the minutes for your last meeting, that would be October the 7th. The information listed that, you know, for my for my addition, my to the public open time, I believe is incorrect, and I would like to correct it. The minutes state that I registered our concern and disappointment at the rejection of Local Power Works LLC's bid for Phase 2 of MCE, and this is obviously a confusion between Tier 2 bidders and Phase 2, phasing in of MCE customers. So I don't know whose confusion that is, but
So, my friend, what I'm willing to hear this evening is what your suggested revisions are, or if they're
That's right.
lengthy, then what I'd like you to do is take it up with staff, and we'll make those changes, but we're not gonna have a lengthy discussion about,
this is the correction.
definitions.
The
Great.
correction is the
What are you
difference between Tier 2 and Phase 2,
It actually says phase 1 in the minutes.
and then below that, Phase 2. Phase 2 is referenced in the second sentence there, I believe.
do you have a written suggestion for corrections?
This is the correction I'm giving you right now, and there's only one other point. It says that I was concerned about the rejection of the bid. Bid was not rejected, and, you know, not accepted and not disqualified. So it wasn't rejected, and it was for Tier 2 qualified bids, which were never rejected. And I'd actually ask you if any of you can remember when those were rejected. So Chairman McGlashan at the September 27th meeting said that our bid would be considered in Tier 2, and then by the time of the meeting a week later, this has been listed as the rejected bid. So those are the two corrections. Tier 2, not Phase 2, and this was not a rejected bid. This was not a considered bid, accepted or disqualified. So that's it.
Okay, thanks for your comments.
You're
Greg,
welcome.
I'm gonna ask you, you know, clearly a debatable item, and so how would you?
Well, I wouldn't make any, I wouldn't not make any change to the reference to the rejected bid. I think in terms of Tier 2, that may be I think that is a correct reference there or not. It may have been, but I'm not sure. So that's one thing I would turn that to Dawn to address that point.
No, I mean, I think there's a discrepancy between the bid process. I mean, during the bid process, the bidders were broken into two tiers, Tier 1 and Tier 2. That's completely different than talking about the RFP process itself, where we did an RFP process for Phase 1 to serve our Phase 1 load. That process is complete, and we now have a supplier. And then we're going to do another process to serve our Phase 2 load. So to change it to tier really wouldn't be accurate. The tiering is simply the way that the bids were broken out at the time for Phase 1.
So it is still being considered then? It has not been rejected,
Mr. Schultz?
It was,
correct?
We have a response going to Local Power Incorporated. In fact, you may have already received that today,
Right, and
so
this is germane to that response, I would have to
I
say.
understand, but I have to tell you, we're not gonna have this debate right now relative to the minutes.
I'm asking you a clarification, so you've asserted
If
that
you'd
this
like
is
to
not
clarify,
Tier 2.
Dawn, and then we're gonna move on.
yeah, I think that what's recommended is not an accurate representation of what was said in the meeting.
Is it
We're
filmed?
certainly happy to go back and look at the recording, though.
I think that would be an excellent idea because I think it is a misrepresentation. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so with that, you will consider it doesn't sound like there are any material changes, some disagreements. And so we've got approval of the consent. Moving on then to item 4, Deep Green Business Recognition. And we have a couple of folks here this evening representing companies in Marin County that we would like to recognize for your participation in our Deep Green program. If I could ask you all just to stand for a moment. First is Tom Miller, Marin Bocce Federation. Tom, are you here? Hi, Tom. Your organization, which so many people enjoy, by the way, including a very good friend of mine who's passionate about it, you have saved 112,000 pounds of CO2 over the last 10 years and recently signed on for Deep Green, for which we're grateful. Next up is Green Ideals, Values Marketing Company, and Susan, can you tell me how to say your last name? Bierzachudek. Okay, I'm going to get that for sure next time. Susan's company has saved over 1,100 pounds of CO2 over the last 10 years. And finally, the town of Fairfax, is Michael here? There you are, Michael Rock. Sorry that Lou's not here tonight. The town of Fairfax has saved 5,520 tons. Correct? Tons, not pounds, is what I saw on that over 10 years. So,
Actually, one
is it pounds?
correction is that it's going to be saved over 10 years. It hasn't yet, since they just signed up, and it's pounds.
thank you, because I was thinking that you guys were already fully engaged in this stuff, and so now you were going to go even further. So, that's great. Thanks for the clarification. So, if I can ask the three of you all to come up here, I believe we have some certificates. And is there anybody else in the audience who is a Deep Green customer? Raise your hand if you are.
Local Power is a Deep Green business.
All right, good job. We're all customers. So, one more, okay. Kiki Laporta from Descom, thank you for being a Deep Green business.
I am a certified green business, but my business is in a building that is a commercial building, and so I'm not a Deep Green customer. Personal. Thank you anyway.
Thank you, we know that you are the champion of Deep Green, as a matter of fact. Okay, so I'd like the three of you to come on up. Dawn, you have some certificates?
Yeah.
And then you can,
So Bochy, well, let's start with Bochy. No, you first. So this is a certificate for you, thanking you for being a Deep Green customer. Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, before you go away, if you would like to say a few words about your business, you're welcome to come up and take the mic for a minute or two. Okay, all right. Free advertising is part of the deal. Susan, for Green Ideals, we have a certificate for you. Whoops, here we go. This one is yours. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So congratulations. Okay, shy crowd.
Well, no, I'll just say that, that I sought you guys. I'm working with you now because I had such a fire start in me when I first heard about what you were doing. And I couldn't stand the fact that it might not be as successful as it should be, that people wouldn't really know what this promise was all about. So thanks for letting me pound on your door until I got in, so I could help you.
hey, guess what?
What?
It's working.
I know, it's working.
And Michael Rock. So this is for you. Thank you very much.
Well, I just wanted to say that we have solar panels on our pavilion building, and we are almost breaking even on how much power we're generating versus what we're using. So we're very excited about that.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. I also would like to acknowledge the city of Belvedere, who is also a Deep Green customer, but not here tonight. And then just for a little more. Excuse me, Tom. Would you like to say a few words on behalf of Belvedere? Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. According to our trustee staff, we have more than 50 businesses in the county of Marin who have signed up to be Deep Green customers. Together, they represent 2,000 tons per year, eliminating the electricity needs of over 250 homes, or taking nearly 400 cars off our roads. And that is, and that's not even the whole enchilada for Deep Green. That's the business sector and more to come. But a number of residents in the county have also signed up for Deep Green, and running at about, I believe, 5% overall signing up for Deep Green. So let's keep it going, and I just want to really appreciate your leadership the companies that are here tonight and Belvedere and Fairfax, and look forward to doing more of these.
We have Belvedere's certificate right here.
Oh, good, okay. Great.
Thank you, Donna. Okay.
Congratulations.
Good.
Okay, is there any public comment on the deep green business recognition? Please.
Tom Miller, Marin Bocce. What I would like to do is give a prop to Vice Mayor Connolly. He attended our board meeting several months ago, and with the information that he presented, he allowed us to make an informed decision to join MCE, so thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, item number 5, we're cruising tonight. The branding update and next steps. Jamie, is that you?
Yes, so this is an informational item only about our branding for Marine Clean Energy and what we've been doing and where we're heading. And you probably all know that we recently launched the new and improved Marine Clean Energy website, and it's up here on the projector, so you guys can all take a look at it. And I wanted to give you all a quick tour of the website so the audience has a good look at it, and you all do as well in case you want to go through it. As you can see just by looking at the website, on the home page it has a much lighter feel. We've created a website that's a lot easier to navigate, and it really emphasizes our brand through the images and the text and the graphic all together. On the top, we have our navigation that tells our story, how it started, why it matters, and where we're going. We have our community, and you can go through here and find out, who are the, hopefully the internet's working. Yes, it is. Who are the members of Marine Clean Energy with the cities and towns. Our supporters page highlights some of the local organizations who have helped so much in the efforts of getting Marine Clean Energy implemented, as well as some of the other local deep green businesses. So we highlight a few different businesses every month about what they're doing and their deep green story. We also have all of the energy options, so all the information about the light green product, the deep green product, our energy efficiency, and energy metering. Obviously, you can still sign up for deep green. Our FAQs are actually really nice and easy to use now. You can just click on, well, actually, let's see. It's frozen. You can just click on any of these and the answer to your question pops up, so it's a lot easier than our older version. And as you can see, there's also a navigation bar on the left-hand side, and a calculate your CO2 savings if you were to sign up for Deep Green, which is really fun, language translator, a great search button, and we also have these images at the top that link to other pages that we thought were important to highlight for when you're checking out the websites. One of the really fun and interesting ones is called What's Your Big Idea? And basically we are inviting Marin residents and businesses to contact us with some of their ideas about going green and renewable energy and on that topic, and we'll feature a couple of stories each month. And this month we have School Pool Marin and a gentleman who has a unique idea for connecting gyms to the electric grid with exercise machines. And one of the other things we also did was we linked the Marin Energy Authority website to the Marin Clean Energy page. So if you were to type in marinenergyauthority.org, it would bring you to this page here, and it has all of the information that the other site did. There's meeting information, upcoming meetings, as well as all of the archived meeting documents from this year and last year. We've got our key documents, all the same key documents, and now we also have all of our resolutions from our meetings up as well. So, and you can see at the bottom another link to help for easy navigation. So as you guys are browsing through the website and checking it out, if you have any comments or suggestions, we would love to hear them from you. And it's really a work in progress, and our team worked really hard to get it up, and so I'd like to thank Descom Studios and Green Ideals for all of their efforts in pulling it together. And one other cool thing about our website is that it is, along with the mission of Marin Energy Authority, the local hosting group is powered by 100% renewable energy. So we like to brag about that as well. And that's all for the website. And then as far as next steps, we want to continue to enhance the brand for Marin Clean Energy. And in your board packet, there was a staff report which had information about an advertising campaign here in Marin for Marin Clean Energy. There's an attachment with a 12-week schedule along with estimated costs for ads for Marin Clean Energy here for print and online periodicals, buses, bus shelters, and also movie theater previews. And we'll be working with Green Ideals to develop the messaging, graphics, and design. And we'll get started on that right away now that the addendum to the contract has been approved. So I think that
great.
concludes it.
Any questions from the board on the presentation? Okay, I have a couple.
Okay.
One is just to say, great job. Looks terrific. So are we maintaining both websites, or did you end up integrating them to one?
No, it's integrated. So if you typed in marinenergyauthority.org or .com, it would bring you to this homepage, and all of the information that was on that page is...
So they mirror one another?
Yes.
Or that it just redirects?
Right.
But at some point, I mean, we are still maintaining the URL, the address.
Right. Like, well, the thing is, if you typed in the URL, it would bring you to this page,
Okay.
which is the new Marin Energy Authority homepage, and has all of the same information that the other website does. So it's a new look and feel, but you can type in the same URL.
But do we, and we still have marincleanenergy.info?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And if you click on that, it'll bring you,
To the same, yeah.
it'll
okay.
bring you to that homepage.
Okay. And I look forward to the advertising campaign and sort of the next round of what you're going to show us, because it looks exciting from the little bit we've seen thus far.
Great.
Okay, public comment on the branding update and any next steps. Okay, wow, this is cruising tonight. All right, moving on to item 6. This one's a fun one from Kirby. Lots of good information on our feed-in tariffs.
Yeah.
Ed, you'll be happy with this, I think.
All right. Well, let me see if I can get this down here. All right. All right. So tonight, just wanted to take an opportunity to go over a couple of, I think, neat things that the technical committee has been considering over the last few months. And in any case, I guess I'm going to feel like I'm repeating myself, because I guess I am, because we've talked about this quite a lot. And so I'll try to move through the material here fairly quickly. Are we going to go back to the feed-in tariff? Okay.
Is that the one you wanted?
Yeah, that's just fine.
So Kirby, just for clarity, how many of us up here tonight are on the TechCom? Just 2, I think, right? Barbara and Damon?
And Dick as well.
Oh, Dick, you are as well? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Tom, you and I are the newbies here.
Yeah. And so in any case, just wanted to take an opportunity here, like I said, to go over a couple of items that fall under the umbrella of integrated resource planning. And I think you'll find that these are consistent both with the business plan and the implementation plan that was developed by this agency, and provide some exciting opportunities for renewable resources, both here locally in Marin County as well as throughout the state of California. In any case, the first item I want to talk about is a feed-in tariff, and particularly an overview of some pricing discussions that were had at the recent technical committee meeting. Going back to September, we spent quite a lot of time at the tech committee going over various aspects of the feed-in tariff that we'd like to see incorporated. Many of those aspects are listed here. You can see things like the size of the program and the size of the projects that we'd want to fold into a feed-in tariff, contract terms, locations for the resources, and again, just like to remind everybody that the feed-in tariff that we're talking about here generally is to provide an opportunity for small renewable generators to sell power directly to the Marin Energy Authority. So this is different than net energy metering. This is a true purchase and sale agreement between resource developer and the authority, as opposed to a netting arrangement. So in any case, at the October Tech Committee meeting, we really focused on the issue of pricing for the feed-in tariff and how it is that we could best develop a pricing structure to create appropriate incentives for local renewable developers to bring projects to the Marin Energy Authority. So in thinking about pricing options, one of the things that we wanted to consider was the manner in which energy is generated and subsequently delivered by different resource types. And I think it's fair to categorize these resource types in three different buckets. We have peak resources, baseload resources, and then intermittent resources. And each of those classifications is generally associated with a particular resource type. For example, peak resources generally capture what would fall under the umbrella of solar, particularly photovoltaic resources. Baseload resources tend to include projects that are fueled by renewable fuel sources like landfill gas, biomass, things like that. And then intermittent resources, which for the purposes of our feed-in tariff, we're really likely going to see wind resources. And these resources have uncontrollable fuel sources, so you're going to get power whenever the wind blows, and as a result, whenever the power flows to you. And in developing a pricing structure, it's important to consider the benefits as well as the potential issues that each one of these different types of resources comes with. And some of those are listed right here. Obviously, solar resources deliver power when it's most valuable, and that's a big positive. On the flip side, they're very costly resources as well. And so you can see we've tried to identify both considerations, both good and bad, for each of these resource types. And you'll see later how these all fold into the pricing mechanisms that we develop. Also, one key piece of the puzzle here in developing a pricing structure for a feed-in tariff is how it is that we want to value that energy. And it seems appropriate to value that energy based on the avoided cost of that energy. And currently, MEA's avoided cost is directly tied to its current power supply agreement with Shell Energy North America. And the table that's included on this slide here is certainly not the base price for the energy that we're buying from Shell. This is a buildup that is inclusive not only of the base price that we pay for energy, and this is a load following product that we receive. So this is has a lot of value in it above and beyond just a block energy purchase, as well as the renewable attribute that we're paying for as well. And you can see down in the bottom here on the footnote, per the contract, that's a $39 per megawatt hour price that we pay for CEC eligible renewable resources that we can claim for reporting purposes related to the renewable portfolio standard. And then also we wanted to consider a local project adder, which is essentially just the value of having a resource here located directly in Marin County. And there's a number of reasons for that, not just aspects related to energy deliverability, but also PR and marketing benefits, as well as just creating direct incentives for local renewable developers to locate their projects right here in Marin County. And so that was kind of the basis that we started from in developing a pricing build-up here. And as a basis for comparison, the utilities, and PG&E in this case, apply what they call a market price referent in developing their feed-in tariff. And this is a price that's publicly developed and available. And you can see here that this is just a sample of what that market price referent is for the next 3 years of energy deliveries. And these particular prices per the feed-in tariffs of the utilities are all adjusted by time and delivery factors to more accurately reflect the relative value of the energy based on the period in which it's received. And so these time of delivery factors look like this. And you can see that based on the season in which the energy is delivered, as well as the time of day in which the energy is delivered, there are significant effects on the relative value. And so these factors are applied to the market price referent, and you can see in the bottom table that these all result in some pretty significant differences in the relative value of energy based on when it's received. One thing that's important to note is that despite all of the effects of this pricing mechanism here, if a renewable resource were to deliver energy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, all of these factors would basically get you right back to the prices in the market price referent table. So despite all the manipulation, if a resource does deliver round-the-clock energy, it gets you right back to that market price referent after all is said and done. So some other considerations that MEA may want to make here in developing a pricing structure for its feed-in tariff are all listed here. One of the key considerations is that administering a time and delivery based pricing structure is time-consuming and administratively burdensome, and so it behooves the agency to consider a pricing structure that gets away from the application of those time and delivery factors and imputes those time delivery factors in more of a standard pricing mechanism. And so that was one of the things that we set out to do here. And as a point of reference, because we felt it was appropriate to link the value of the energy to the cost of energy displaced under the Shell agreement, we used the base price, the $60.80 base price as a starting point, and then built that up based on the renewable premiums that we pay under the contract, as well as the local project adder that we referenced. And then ultimately, that resulted in the development of 3 different pricing structures for the 3 different energy delivery profiles that we mentioned, base, peak, and intermittent. And so here, this is a recommended base price structure for the feed-in tariff. You can see here that the prices are based on the $60.80 base price under the Shell agreement, plus the $39 renewable adder, plus another $10 premium for renewable locally developed renewables. And then one of the things that we then stripped out was a $10 deduction based on the fact that the product being provided under a feed-in tariff will not be a load-following product. So as I mentioned before, Shell provides us with energy whenever we need it in the amounts that we need it in. And these particular contracts won't necessarily do that, and it'll be MEA's responsibility to integrate those resources into its portfolio. There's obviously costs in doing that, so it's important to kind of deduct that. And as you can see here, this is what we ultimately wound up with for a base pricing structure. Similarly, we developed a peak pricing structure, which really takes into consideration similar adjustments with one exception, and that is based on the time of delivery of the peak energy product. We applied a 20% premium for energy delivered in the peak time period. And then as far as intermittent resources go, this here you'll see as just a matter of comparison is really kind of the lowest price point in our structure. Because the resource is intermittent, there are various costs associated with managing intermittent resources. And so we felt that it was appropriate to reflect those costs in the price that we would pay to a potential project developer. And you might ask, well, how does that price then compare with what PG&E would be offering under its own feed-in tariff? And here's what it looks like. The first line here is really what you would receive for a base load resource under the market price referent base structure, which is what PG&E applies. MEA would offer a price that is noticeably but not exceedingly higher, that's reflective of the value of a locally developed resource. And you can see this is within that $10 to $20 range that we discussed earlier in the presentation. And as I mentioned, this is intended, the difference here is intended to reflect the value to MEA of having a locally developed resource. So we think this is a pretty attractive proposition for a potential resource developer. And moving forward, we'll be going back to the technical committee in November and bringing a draft of the feed-in tariff itself to the committee, inclusive of the pricing structure that we discussed here tonight, subject to revisions and recommendations received then. We'd also will be bringing a related application that customers will need to, potential sellers will need to complete in order to participate in this program. And then we'll also be completing a legal review of the power purchase agreement that will be used. And this is a standard offer, so this contract will not be changed from one seller to the next. And so it's important that it undergoes legal review so that we get everything locked down and to the liking of the agency. And ultimately we'll be targeting approval of the feed-in tariff in December or January, pending the edits that need to occur, and then launching that feed-in tariff in the first month of next year. So it's pretty exciting. Any questions or comments on this particular presentation?
My understanding is that with phase one, our capacity is about 18 megawatts, is that correct? And when we go into phase two, that will go up to about 89 or so?
I think
in
it's,
that range?
what I think we're looking at is about 33 megawatts peak right now, and then I think that goes up to, it's about 150 megawatts at full rollout. So that's what we're
Okay,
looking
I
at.
guess my question then is, initially within a year or so, if we're up to 150 or so, almost all of that's going to come from CENA. Is that correct initially? And then these different projects and companies will feed into that and progressively replace some of that capacity.
Well, the current agreement with Shell is based on the volumes that need to be served for phase one. And so moving forward into phase two or any subsequent phases, there would need to be additional resources brought online in order to serve those additional customers. And so the feed-in tariff, I guess, presents one of two opportunities. One, it could displace energy provided by Shell under the agreement. We do have a substitution provision that's built into the agreement, so it would allow for renewable resources contracted through the feed-in process to displace those deliveries from Shell. Alternatively, as we bring on new customers, this could provide a basis for serving those new customers. So it could really go either way. But in any case, as you move forward to phase two, there will be additional resource needs of the agency, and those will have to be addressed with a different
Is the ultimate hope, I guess, that we will be totally independent of CENA with enough local projects or regional projects?
I think that's more of a policy decision for the board, but certainly between the feed-in tariff and then the next item that we'll be discussing, the renewable project request for proposals, that would get you well on your way to meeting that objective, if that is in fact an objective.
And it may be worth clarifying that the feed-in tariff cap is 2 megawatts for right now. So we're not looking at a big chunk of our load initially, but that can certainly change over time. But a 2 megawatt cap would give us an opportunity to see how the program is working and then reevaluate within 6 months or so.
Actually, yeah, I wanted Kirby to elaborate on that a little bit. What was the reasoning behind the program cap size at this point?
Yeah, at this point, one of the main reasons for limiting that cap is so that the agency had some influence over one, over kind of monitoring the progress of this program and evaluating how it does in fact impact the economics of the agency, what the response is from potential suppliers, and then provide us with an opportunity to make some adjustments to that based on the response that we receive. So if the response is very favorable, things are going well with these suppliers, that would give us some flexibility to ramp that up over time. But the idea would be to start small, monitor progress, and then make prudent decisions moving forward based on the performance of this particular program.
And as I think you'll note later when we're talking about the request for proposal, it really is an overall program that
Absolutely.
we're looking at. This is a piece of it, that will be a piece of it, ultimately to achieve this vision of more local renewables.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And I think it is important to note as well that the 2 megawatt cap right now, while that may not seem like a lot necessarily, that represents 6 or 7% of our current capacity, peak capacity needs, as opposed to PG&E's feed-in tariff cap, which represents about 0.5% of their capacity needs. So I guess the short story is, by comparison, we're really doing a good job of trying to advance this as far as we can at this particular point and allow renewable developers the opportunity to do business with the agency.
I have a couple for you, Kirby.
Sure.
On this. I think that the 2 megawatt cap makes sense to, be a bit conservative when we start out, give this whole thing a try. I'm obviously hopeful that it works and we can expand that over time, because that's the whole big idea here.
Right.
To kind of stimulate the market and bring economics to Marin, economic opportunity. How many generators do you think, it's a little bit crystal ball, but how many generators or how many contracts do you think that you might have in this initial phase? And then sort of the secondary question to that is, I imagine you guys went through a number of models, as you are professionals at doing, sort of in terms of contract management, cost benefit, because it's not a huge amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could just comment on, is this a lot of contract management, or is it once we get those contracts in place, it pretty much handles itself?
No, I think that the contract management obligations administratively for the agency will not be all that significant. Because this is going to be a standard agreement. It's a pretty simple buy-sell here. Our responsibilities will really be more in the invoice reconciliation arena, and those responsibilities should be fairly minimal. As far as the number of projects that we'd expect to receive, that's going to be somewhat related to the individual project size limit that we've set, which is a size that's less than or equal to 1 megawatt. So I would, just pure conjecture here, it could be anywhere from 2 to maybe 5 or 6
right.
Projects. So that's really what we're looking at here, and I would think that hopefully we'll see a diversity of resources as well. So.
Okay. And a follow-on to that, I know that you've got criteria and there's standard contract and all of that, but the companies that we would be looking to work with are established generators. These are not small, they may be small, but they're not sort of startups at this point. They're pretty well established. And
yeah, that would be one of the
criteria.
The criteria that would need to be met by these particular or prospective counterparties. They would need to demonstrate financial viability. They would need to demonstrate the appropriate experience and credentials to develop the facilities that they're proposing to develop. And so, yes, those sorts of considerations are addressed. And just to, get to the point, you're not going to get too many fly-by-nights that are going to move through the process here, because they're going to have to demonstrate their qualifications and credentials in order to do this. Yeah.
Great, okay. And then just what is the minimum feed-in tariff contract that PG&E will take?
I believe it's similar
Or is it 2?
You know, that's something we've actually presented on before, and I wish I had it in front of me now, but I don't. And it actually may be 1 megawatt as well, but
Oh, really?
I'll have to
Okay.
get back to you.
That shifted recently because I know there were some issues around that.
Yeah, it may be between 1 and 5 megawatts. So I'll have to get back to you on that. So don't hold me to what I just said.
But the great news for us is that we're providing a better price to
Yes.
pay out.
Yeah.
So we're beating PG&E in that regard, and we're also, as a percentage of our overall load, even with a 2% cap, we're beating them on that basis.
Yeah, and I think the short story again is that, you know, we're providing the appropriate incentives to local renewable developers here, and I think that's a big positive.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Okay, members of the public who'd like to comment on this issue, please come on up. A couple minutes each. State your name, please, for the record.
Tom Miller, Marin Bocce. I have one question. When the energy from Shell decreases because of the feed-in, does the price for that energy go up under the contract?
No, there's actually, okay, to answer the question.
Yeah.
Okay. The price doesn't go up. There may be some small transactional costs related to Shell remarketing the energy that they've agreed to deliver to MEA, and so that would be that's a minor consideration. But in terms of the price, the price in and of itself does not go up.
There's no penalty to MEA, financial penalty, when you reach a low point on the energy.
Oh, there is a bandwidth in the contract, but that's really a separate discussion. But no, there's no financial penalty specifically related to energy substitution, other than the remarketing costs of that energy, which should be minimal.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Spofford from Sustainable San Rafael. Just a question. As you said, you think the incentives are appropriate, you said, and I assume that sort of means to attract the people who are already sort of playing in this game. But my question is, where does that rate relative to sort of the ultimate gold standard, something like the German thing that's a tariff so high that they literally come running out of the woodwork saying, I want to build for you? Because at some point, that's sort of where we're trying to get. Now, we don't have the public policy kind of backing that they have in Germany, but I'd sort of love to know what that framework is. You know, this is better than PG&E, but how much better could it be, or should it be, if we really wanted to encourage these guys to appear? You follow what the question is?
Sure. I think that's, I don't know if that's more of a discussion or a debate or something else to take up at the technical committee.
No, yeah, I don't need to hear tonight.
I think it's a great question. And you know, I think right now what you're seeing this evening is something that you know, makes good sense for this agency, given the point that it's at in its development.
Yeah. I'd love to, when we get to the tech committee, I would love to have that framework just to put it up on the wall as a gold standard. You know, thanks.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
One other comment that kind of relates to that question is, you know, these are going to be judgment calls where we're going to be wanting to walk the line between doing everything we can to incentivize local power, new technologies, new developers that aren't already in the business, that sort of thing, and also offering competitive rates to customers. And I think as we grow and expand, we'll be able to we'll have more leeway in having that discussion and being able to possibly be out there as more of a leader in the market to incentivize things as we have more of a cushion to make sure that we have competitive rates and that sort of thing, because that type of those types of actions will come with a cost, and I think that our board will be interested in moving in that direction, but we'll need to take that up as a policy decision as we go.
Okay. Barbara?
Hi. I have a fair amount of experience with the standard offer in the demand side, the energy efficiency and demand response side, than I do with the renewable side, but I think that there are some things that apply across the renewable side also. And one is that the difference between a standard offer and a grants type of program like an RFP is that a standard offer, the risk is on the developer rather than the risk being on the agency, because the developer has to deliver the power or they don't get paid. And that's what really differentiates us, you know, a feed-in tariff from the other type of program. So since there is a lot less risk, I actually think that the cap should be on the RFP side instead of on the FIT side, because like what Bob was saying, what we really want is for people to come swarming into this program, and that's really what made Germany shoot to the, you know, to the best in the world on their renewable resources with an FIT feed-in tariff. So I would encourage you to look at some of the other elements of a feed-in tariff that you can employ. One thing is that you can put a different price on the table for different types of resources. Obviously, a solar resource is going to be more expensive than wind, but not necessarily as much as the market price reference would indicate. There are offsetting potential that need to be considered. Obviously, you're not dealing with the long-distance transmission, and there are ways that you could fill in the blanks on those intermittent resources. I also believe that it's not as necessary to demonstrate the qualifications and credentials for an FIT. You want basic, you know, they need to be a functioning business and have have their licenses and this and that, but those qualifications and credentials are much more important for the RFP, because there you are responsible once you're starting to work with them. I also would really encourage you to put a demand resource opportunity in your FIT. There are ways to measure demand side resources that the New England Independent System Operator is currently utilizing for a 6-state region in the Northeast United States. So the energy efficiency resources actually won that auction in those 6 states and are providing the largest number of resources, which I think is quite a wonderful thing to appreciate, because we don't have anything like that here in the California and PG&E territory. One of the other things that my lawyer, who is
Barbara,
also here and may discuss
about
this
another
further,
minute.
well, maybe I'll just let Martin say this, because the other issue that you really need to be concerned about, the biggest barrier, is your interconnection costs. So Martin,
did you want to ask Barbara something?
Good evening. My name's Martin Homack. I worked on these PG&E. I worked on the PG&E solar PV case, and I have reviewed the proposed plan that they have for implementing their feed-in tariff. They don't call it a feed-in tariff. But one of the big problems is the interconnect costs. You know, you can't just hook up to their wires without getting their permission and paying their costs. And they have recently come out with a map, you know, which they put on their website, which shows what their transformer capacity is. And of course, Marin has a very low, almost minimal capacity because there are no power plants here. If you go to a place like Contra Costa County, they have lots of structure for transmitting electricity. But if you go to Marin, I mean, most of the wires have very low capacity. And so I was wondering, I mean, if you're going to offer a higher feed-in tariff without considering the cost of the wires, then the wires cost might be higher than the cost of the project. I have friends and clients who tried building PV plants in Southern California, and you know, they would find that their solar PV panels cost maybe $800,000, and Southern California Edison said yes, and we need $650,000 to upgrade the system to hook up to it. So I mean, Interconnect costs are very significant. And then what Barbara was saying is also important, because you've got to consider, are you buying energy or are you buying capacity? If you're buying energy, that's very good during the peak use of the day, between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, when everybody comes home and cooks dinner and whatever. But the capacity part in the afternoon or in the evening could be maybe better met by wind when the sun isn't shining, and because you do have a lot of wind in Marin County. So having a mix of resources is important. But if you don't own your own wires to get the electricity from where the generator is to where you need it, then you have to deal with PG&E. And why should they donate their wires to you when they could be making profit over buying their own feed-in resources? Because they need to meet their 20% and soon 33% renewables. So it seems to me you should be having weekly meetings with the PG&E guys, finding out what their plans are, and because their program is being implemented as we speak. There's an advice letter at the Public Utilities Commission, and they're talking about aggregating lots of small projects together, and then having those people aggregate their interconnect costs, and that would minimize the cost to the developers.
Okay. Thank you for the heads up.
I'm Ed Mainland, Sierra Club, California Energy Climate Committee. On the theme of interconnectivity, you're probably, most of you are aware that CalISO recently came out with a decision, I think it was on September 9th, by which they abolished the distinction between the large generation generator interconnection program and the small generator interconnection program. This greatly disadvantages small generators, whom you would be looking to get local power. And the Feed-in Tariff Coalition is appealing this to FERC, the federal authority, and hopes that this decision might be somehow mitigated, if not set aside. This will all happen in November. I thought you ought to be aware of that, because I don't know what opportunities you have to weigh in, but I would suggest when the Feed-in Tariff Coalition interest groups and smart people to try to tackle the renewables local interconnectivity problem, and that has withered in the CPUC under pressure from the big utilities, and they haven't funded that program as of this last summer. That's another thing you ought to be aware of, because if you have any political influence, that's something to resuscitate and get that REDIC program back in action at tackling the barriers to interconnectivity by small renewable power generators. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Utilities have tariff rates. CCAs do not have tariffs. Am I correct in understanding this is just a PPA that's been branded as a feed-in tariff to help people to try and connect with it or understand it better?
I think you're talking about semantics. You know, it's a standard offer. It's a standard offer, and it's modeled after a feed-in tariff style program. So.
Okay. All right, any further questions or audience comments on that? Public comment? All right, then let's move on then, Kirby, to the renewable.
Actually, maybe we can ask Kirby. I thought Barbara raised an interesting point about the risk allocation. I mean, did you have any reaction to that between the feed-in tariff and an RFP? I mean, my sense is there's a balance there, but I don't know if you have any reaction to that.
And I don't understand why it would be different.
Yeah, I mean, Barbara, maybe can I get you up here and grill you for a minute?
I think the main distinction between the feed-in tariff and what we're about to talk about, which is the RFP, is project size. So I wouldn't necessarily agree, other than the fact that when you have a larger project, you're more reliant upon it in terms of your planning. And if it doesn't come through, there's a risk there, whereas with a small project that might be on a feed-in tariff, it's a little bit less of a big deal if that
Yeah, my
doesn't come
sense
through.
is to mitigate your risk, you'd want it under contract. But what am I missing about your point, Barbara?
Well, as I said, I'm an expert on the energy efficiency side and not on the renewable side, and so I don't know what happens, for example, when there's an interconnect problem, if you've got everything else ready to roll and you just can't get on the wires. But in an energy efficiency project, you would basically, as the developer, you would provide the work, and after a certain point or a certain, amount of capacity is delivered, then you get paid. You don't get paid in advance. In other words, the agency is not out that money, and the developer sitting there and has, and can't deliver its power. You only pay when they deliver the power. And I'm sure there would have to be, with renewables, there'd have to be, issues about they would have to deliver the power when they say they're going to, time of day, et cetera, like that.
Right.
But this is where I don't have that familiarity with the renewable side to understand what happens when those projects are stalled. But I do know that I think at least half of PG&E's projects and the other utilities projects never happen because there are all sorts of problems. And so with a feed-in tariff, it's usually very small, and so the developer can basically finance it with a credit card, and so they finance it. You're not responsible for the financing, and then when they get their program up and running, they start getting paid, and their ability to deliver power allows them to grow and produce, put more solar panels up or another windmill, or and provide more power. So that's how they function, and then the agency benefits by by having no risk, no upfront costs, etc. And so those are the advantages that I see. Now there are other ways to look at it, I'm sure, with the RFP.
So what I would love to do then is, as you move into this next presentation, if you want to call forth any points to key off of what Barbara's saying, just to clarify, that would be great. Fair enough, Barbara?
Sure.
Okay. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Kirby, can you address why it is that there'd be an interconnect problem with one type of a service and not the same problem with another type of service? It seems to me if you got an interconnect problem, you got it whether you're under a small renewable or whether you're under a renewable power supply contract. You still have the same problem. You got to be able to get it from someplace else onto the wire.
Yeah, that's certainly one piece of the puzzle. The other is the available capacity on the infrastructure to support the size of the resource.
And either contract, I mean, you write the contract so that you don't get paid until it goes onto the wire too. So I mean,
That's correct.
We can control that with a
That's correct.
strong piece of paper.
And the pricing incentive that we're providing here I'm hopeful that will offset some of these potential costs if they are in fact incurred by the developers. So hopefully that'll be able to get them over the hump in that regard.
And is that something that as the contract is developed, that it would be, they would have to demonstrate that they don't have any interconnectivity problems and that they've already basically handled that cost before we would do a standard contract with them?
Yeah, there's a standard process.
It has to be done before
absolutely.
we will buy their power. So all that stuff they have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a process, a standard process that's in place that they need to follow, and an agreement they need to execute with PG&E, and various studies that need to be completed to demonstrate the technical feasibility of interconnecting that facility with the system. John, did you have anything else to offer on that?
No, I just, the interconnection is one of several milestones that would be in an agreement with MEA, a power purchase agreement with MEA. Developer would have to hit those. The risk is on the developer. MEA doesn't pay anything, upfront to a developer. It pays for energy that's produced and delivered under either case, whether it's a FIT or a contract pursuant to an RFP.
Okay, great. Kirby.
All right, so on to another item here that, needless to say, the technical committee's been quite busy here. This particular presentation is focused on another document that's being developed by the technical committee right now, and that is a request for proposals for local renewable projects. And again, this is highly consistent with the goals and objectives of the agency here. This will provide a mechanism by which MEA can supplement its existing energy supplies and also accommodate future growth of the customer base as well over time. And you can see here that what we're going to talk about this evening are just some of the key requirements that are in that document. I think you have before you this evening a draft that's been developed in cooperation with the technical committee. And there are some key points that I just want to bring to your attention this evening, and then also just briefly discuss the upcoming schedule for this document. But just to get to the point, provide an overview of the key specifications and requirements that are currently in the draft RFP. Right now, as drafted, the document's requesting up to 40 megawatts of CEC certified renewable resources. There's some detail here as to why that number is relevant and where it fits in. Currently, MEA provides a minimum of 25%. That's a commitment that it made. Minimum 25% of RPS eligible renewable supply to its customers. And basically what that means is it requires about 20 megawatts of renewable capacity in order to meet the current renewable needs of MEA customers. And as we move forward, that need will grow to approximately 100 megawatts, depending on the resource type. That number may change somewhat. But this 40 megawatts of capacity that's being requested under the RFP will effectively provide for up to 60% of MEA's total renewable needs moving into phase 2. So not an insignificant amount, but yet also not 100%. So this provides some flexibility in terms of program implementation. If the plans of the agency were to change in any way with respect to implementation, this would give them a little bit of freedom in determining how it is that they roll customers into the program. There's also a carve-out here for up to 1 megawatt of local photovoltaic solar. And this is, as I said, this is additive to the 40 megawatts that's being requested from really any CEC eligible renewable resource type. And the reason for this carve-out is because this could be used as an opportunity to provide for a solar cooperative program. I know we've presented on SMUD's Solar Shares program, as well as Tucson Electric Power's Bright Solar program. And so this would provide an opportunity to either allow for one of those programs to be developed or just to supplement the existing resource portfolio of the agency. As far as individual project sizes, we've tried to create an incentive in the RFP again for local project development. And in order to do that, we allowed for much smaller project sizes to be bid from a local area, which includes Marin County. Outside of Marin County, we'd ask for those resources to be at least 5 megawatts in size. And so there is a bit of a distinction there, and again, we believe that provides some additional flexibility and incentives for local developers. And then as far as the photovoltaic resources are concerned, here we'll have a minimum 250 kilowatt project size, and that would accommodate, of course, up to 4 projects to fit underneath that 1 megawatt capacity cap.
Before you go on, real quick.
Sure.
How come, you have a comment here, inside Marin County, a minimum 1 megawatt won't compete with feed-in tariff? Why does it offer flexibility to locally developed projects? Could you just say a little more about what the difference is here?
Yeah, just there are a number of challenges that might be encountered by a developer that's trying to deal with a larger size project, whether it be project financing, whether that be permitting issues, whether that be interconnection issues. This is really intended to allow creative developers with resources identified inside the county to avoid some of those issues, or at least minimize some of those issues based on the size of the project that we'll accept within the county.
So this is, in some ways, a preference.
It is.
A preference policy for Marin County.
I think it's safe to say
resources.
it's explicitly
It
a
is
preference.
a preference.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Sorry to
Um,
interrupt.
No problem at all. As far as the location of the projects that we're willing to consider in the RFP as drafted, we just mentioned this, we do have a strong preference for in-county resources, but we'll consider resources from anywhere in the state of California, with preference given to resources that are closest to Marin County. At this time, based on concerns related to RPS qualifications of out-of-state resources, we're going to limit the solicitation to focus on in-state resources, and that will minimize any issues that may surface in the regulatory arena related to RPS compliance from out-of-state deliveries. And then as far as technologies are concerned, for this solicitation, we're really looking at anything that meets the CEC's eligibility guidelines. With respect to deal structure, we're going to allow potential sellers to offer up a straight power purchase agreement style arrangement where we would just be buying the power from the counterparty, or we'll allow them to bid in a PPA with an option to buy the facility. And this has become very common and has been common for a while with solar developers. And what those entities will typically do as tax investors is that they will hold on to the facility and operate that facility for a period of time that coincides with the duration of applicable incentives and credits. And then after that time, they'll offer the facility up at a market price to the buyer. Looking at a minimum 10-year contract term in this case. As far as the schedule and requested delivery start dates, we've got 2 different windows set up here. There's a 3-year window in which we'll consider initial project deliveries, and that's between January 1, 2012 and December 31 of 2014. The idea here in restricting that window is that we didn't want, as staff, to be administratively burdened by proposals for projects that would be developed, say, 5, 10, 15 years out from now, and need to consider those as part of a mix of proposals that will likely include projects that would be of a more immediate concern to the agency. And then as far as the local PV resources are concerned, there's an 18-month window there, and we believe that's appropriate because of the small project size and the fact that those ought to be developed more expeditiously. And as far as the schedule is concerned, we have 2 different pieces here that we're looking at. One is the RFP preparation schedule, and then the other are just administrative aspects of the RFP itself. And right now, we're working on finalizing the draft RFP, and we'll bring that back at the November technical committee meeting for further discussion. We'll also be performing a legal review of the RFP during the month of November, and with it in mind that we'll incorporate final revisions and bring this to the December board meeting for approval. And then we target release shortly thereafter in early to mid-December, with responses due in late January, early February, and then notifications and negotiations falling out based on that schedule. So again, another exciting piece of the puzzle here, and if you have any questions or comments, love to hear them.
Questions from the board? Okay, you know I've got a couple.
Sure.
You got one?
Just have one.
Well, the solicitations that I've administered in the past, we've received very robust responses from the market. I mean, it is a seller's market nowadays.
Robust meaning what? I have no concept. or
Well,
no
robust would mean,
benchmark.
for this particular solicitation, using this as an example, if you're requesting 40 megawatts, you know, I would hope that we'd receive proposals for 3 or 4 times that amount. You know, so that would be my hope.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. And then just to clarify here, so everybody's crystal clear on this new RFP is not replacing any existing Shell power. We're not invoking the substitution clause. This is for future power needs for our next phase or phases.
Yes, that would be the idea. We certainly could substitute, but the idea here would be to sync up the implementation of subsequent phases of customers with deliveries from these facilities. So that would be the idea. And then any subsequent contracts that are negotiated by the agency for incremental energy requirements could be integrated with these resources here.
Right. I mean, I think that's an important point because it is also part of the weaning off of
Yes.
Shell process, because we're not just, at this point, we're not buying 40 megawatts from Shell. And they're a great company, but this is, again, sort of delivering on what we said we would do.
Absolutely.
The only other question I have here is that, so 40 megawatts is gonna be what percentage of the overall total again that we need? Is it 40 megawatts out of 100? Is that what you're saying?
40 megawatts roughly equates to 40%. And so we have about, we moving into phase 2, the current Shell agreement would allow for about 20% of the RPS needs as we move into phase 2, and this would account for an additional 40%. So that would mean if this RFP was fully subscribed, that we'd have about 60% of our renewable needs under contract. And that's, of course, subject to the resource types. It could be much more depending on whether or not we receive base load versus peak or intermittent resources. But this would be a nice running start.
Okay, and so then for another layer, that total amount is what percentage of our overall load? Because right now we have a minimum baseline of 25% and all of that, right? But when we go out and we do this new RFP, that is a significant number of megawatts. Doesn't that increase the minimum load that we're providing substantially, right?
Yeah, the energy requirements moving into phase 2 certainly do increase. There's about 150 megawatt peak load at that time, and so there are adjustments that need to be made based on the capacity factors at which renewable resources operate. But this would be a very significant piece.
Yeah, so we're higher than 25% is what I'm trying to get to.
We
Is that correct?
certainly could be, depending on the resource type.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's to be determined,
Yeah.
but that's where we're going.
Yes,
Higher than the minimum threshold,
absolutely.
essentially. Okay, great. Other questions or comments? Okay, open it up for public comment on this.
Charles Schultz again for Local Power. I'd just like to say this as quickly as possible so that it'll be clear to you. You've already asked for this in your initial RFP. You didn't respond to it. You didn't disqualify our bid. You haven't accepted it. You haven't rejected it. And you said that you would consider it, or at least the chairman did, at the meeting on September the 27th. And my concern, representing this business, is supposing we bid on this, how do we know that you mean it this time? Because you've blown us off. You haven't responded to any of our communications, except for perhaps one tiny response this afternoon. And so what assurance do we have? We brought a consortium of local and Bay Area businesses to give you 3 times this amount, and you couldn't even say, no, we don't want this, or this isn't appropriate, or we can't do this. This is wrong. We have to reject you. That never happened. So if we come back again for 40 megawatts, up to 40 megawatts, what assurance do we have that you're serious about this? And I can give the copy of the letter that I presented to the executive committee now to the members that I missed at that time, excepting, of course, the chairman, who's not here. But that is my question for you.
I gotta say, you will have no more assurance than any other company that submits and responds to the RFP, and no less assurance That's why we're doing a whole new one. Okay? Any other comments on the RFP? Barbara?
Yeah, I would recommend that we take another step in between here and look at what we want. This is great to ask the market what they have out there, but what's the criteria that we would make these decisions on? I mean, this is where with a feed-in tariff, you actually, it's more a potluck situation. But even with the feed-in tariff, you can say, we want X number of megawatts of wind at this price. You can also put in, we want it to be inside Marin or within a certain distance from Marin, things like that. And the reason why I want to emphasize the integrated resource plan, you can do much more with an integrated plan at a better price than if you just say, well, we'll take your renewable energy. That's a little bit chancy, because you could just buy all your expensive resources first without realizing that you need a certain number of lower price resources to balance out the more expensive ones. This is also why I think you should be looking at energy efficiency as one of those resources, because the energy efficiency resources can be the cheapest of all. So you can be looking at all of the cost factors when you're doing an integrated resource plan, and these are not necessarily even cost factors to MEA, but they certainly are cost factors to the customers, because the customers, if you are doing a lot less transmission distribution, then the customer is not paying for that distribution side cost, and that overall is a big benefit to Marin ratepayers. So for example, if you had a solar project, you could put it on a facility that operates during the day and uses that power, then there's no transmission costs, no distribution costs. That would be a big benefit, and it would also save MEA the need to schedule power over those wires. So those are the kinds of things that you could be doing in making here's your kind of perfect world plan, and then when you go out to the market, you can give the developers a better idea of what you're really looking for. And you could also, I know one of the things that Local Power advertises that they would do is the integration of the resources, something that they really emphasize. I think that's something that is really beneficial. I'm not promoting the Local Power plan by any means, but I'm just saying that there is a reason to look at that. And as a board, I would certainly hope that the consultants and and the community would get together and make these decisions about what it is we want, because we might be able to get power even cheaper than what we think. I think the market price reference is
about 30 seconds.
Yeah, is not necessarily what those resources cost. We have some pretty good analysis from the Sierra Club analyst on the that was done for the state, that shows that the market price reference costs are way out of proportion to what what you can do if you've got a good integrated plan.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'd like to, actually, in further thought here, I'd like to make some comments in the record regarding the comments made by the representative from Local Power. And the MEA's position is, I think, very clearly set forth in a letter sent to Local Power today, which was in response to the October 27 letter that the chair and board members had received. But just a couple points. The record here is very clear that there were a number of proposals received in response to the May 2009 RFP. In the record, only 3 were selected for final consideration. The others were, in effect, rejected. no different than any bidding process, that finalists are selected or a final bid is selected, and the others are not. And those, at that point, have been rejected by the board. Ultimately, CNA became the ultimate contracting party with us after that process was complete. And as you all recall, it was a very lengthy process where all of the proposals were very fairly and thoroughly evaluated. So at this point in time, that proposal made by Local Power is no longer an issue. It was not accepted as part of the 2009 RFP process. So at this point in time, if Local Power wants to submit a new RFP, or a new proposal, I should say, in response to the RFP that is now going to be issued, of course they're free to do so, and they were told so in the letter that was just sent to them today. That's their choice. And at that point in time, there'll have to be a new proposal, and that'll be evaluated against the criteria of that RFP, along with all the other proposals that are made at that time.
Very good. Thank
Pardon
you.
me, may I respond to that?
No, I'm sorry. We're going to keep going with this.
I believe that's incorrect. Can I correct the record?
You know what? No.
No.
Has finished. Thank you. I'd like to, we'll take this offline, and we're not going to have this debate in a public meeting. Thank you. Okay. I think we now are done with item 6. Ed,
Madam
sorry.
Chairman, if I could make a quick
Sure.
comment without taking up a whole lot of time. The market price reference, I think, is well known as a highly artificial, highly suspect index. It is a projection out into the future of natural gas prices. It has never tracked reality. So that if you're basing so much on market price reference, I believe you ought to take another look at what you're doing, and I'd be glad to furnish details on that offline. Thank you.
If I may, just very
Yes.
quickly, we specifically don't tie our pricing to the market price reference. It's actually tied to the avoided cost of energy through the Shell contract. So we simply...
But it is based in reality.
Yeah, it is
In
based in reality, based on forward energy prices, and we simply just display the market price reference as a matter of comparison.
Okay. Hi, Rebecca.
My name's Rebecca Collins from Fairfax, and I just really want to second what Barbara brought up and also what Ed brought up in terms of holistic planning, because I know, I just want to say thank you for the tremendous amount of work that it took us to get here, to have MEA, and I'm just hoping that in this process of the RFP, that integrated planning and holistic planning becomes a center focus. If you look at the methodologies of permaculture and the way that people are looking at biomimicry and just how systems integrate. It is the goal of our times to integrate the systems and to not do it in the way that we have done in the past. And I think it is enormously significant and effective, and it brings forward what Ed was talking about the process and how, we don't know who's going to be sitting on this board. We don't know who staff is going to be. So to have that as part of the mission is stacking functions, just like you have, in permaculture. And I would also highly recommend that people look into holistic management, which was created for farmers, but has applications across the board. And what I'm hearing is a lot about numbers, which of course is important, but what I'm not hearing is what Barbara is talking about, and also what Ed is talking about is the mission of holistic management, and looking at making sure that we have stacking functions so that we are being the most effective as possible. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on item 6? All right, then moving on to item 7, Beth?
Actually, do we want to just, how are we leaving item 6? I mean, I think we got a lot of good input tonight that we can take up again at the next technical committee.
That seems appropriate to me.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's coming back for approval in December.
On
or
December
January.
4th, yeah. So today it's just a discussion item.
And are we going to end up approving the feed-in tariff piece too, or do those come together as part of the approval process?
Yeah, the timeline here for the feed-in tariff, I believe, was a December, January timeframe. This is all subject to legal review, the fact that it is a standard contract, and there will be some council review of that particular agreement. We want to make sure that that's where we want it to be and how we want it to look before we go forward and put that out as a standard offer. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, just a 1 month window, yeah.
So they both could come in December if all the, if the
Absolutely.
technical committee is happy with it and the legal review is completed.
That's correct.
Anything else? Okay. Now, Beth, moving on to the regulatory update. I know you have
Everybody's
a lot.
favorite topic, so I know you've all been
So
waiting for this
important.
agenda item, so.
Sleep will come easy tonight.
One of the most important things we're dealing with.
So
That's true,
there
too.
has been as usual, a very high level of involvement by MEA at the Public Utilities Commission. So I'll just walk through the different dockets that we've been involved in and what's happened since our last meeting and where we're going. The first one to mention is the PG&E general rate case. This is phase 2 of the general rate case. So since we last met, there was submission of testimony by our expert witness, Kirby Dussel, and we also provided rebuttal testimony against other testimony that was provided. There were, MEA made a number of data requests of PG&E, which we just received responses to, and we'll be evaluating those responses. PG&E also made data requests of us, and our responses are included in your packet. Going forward, there's going to be evidentiary hearings coming up. There's 5 days worth of evidentiary hearings. So we are currently preparing for cross-examination of witnesses. So we'll be cross-examining PG&E witnesses, and as well, our expert witness is open for cross-examination. So those are the major milestones that we're going to be looking forward to on that. And we'll keep you posted. The next item is the Energy Resource Recovery Account, ERA. This has been pretty quiet on this docket. PG&E provided an update on their calculations of PCIA. Apologies, that was their calculations were delayed. The Energy Division apparently wasn't able to get certain third-party information that needs to be incorporated. So that will be provided shortly. However, the administrative law judge issued a proposed decision on this point, which will incorporate PG&E's update once it's available. So that's moving along. I think that we've made our points, and certain points that we mentioned did make it into the proposed decision. And are going to be reflected in PG&E's update as well.
So Beth, in plain English, is this the one that deals with the energy efficiency and public goods charge?
Nope.
No.
This is PCIA. And how that's
calculated.
Set. Yep.
Okay.
The next one relates to energy efficiency and EMV, and this is the one that I think you're thinking of, and this relates to how CCAs can access energy efficiency funds. And there's been a lot of movement on this docket. The hope of the commission is that it's going to be wrapped up by the end of the year, which is actually very swift movement by the commission. So since we last met, I've filed opening and reply comments on safeguards. That is, what safeguards should be in place to ensure that there isn't IOU misuse of energy efficiency funds. Then there was, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there was a workshop, and resulting from that workshop, the IOUs, the CCAs, and various parties came together to prepare a joint workshop report. This workshop report really discussed 3 options that are available to the commission for how CCAs would be able to access energy efficiency funds, public goods charge funds, other funds. the first option mentioned is the CCA option, so we would go directly to the commission with a proposal for what our energy efficiency programs are going to be, and we can access those funds directly. One of the other proposals by the utilities was that we as a CCA would apply just as any other third party. So, you know, a company who wants to provide energy efficiency services can apply to PG&E, and we would go through that exact same process where we would apply to PG&E for funds, and we opposed that position. And there was a secondary option offered by PG&E that we would go through the process that local government programs use to access public discharge funds, which is also by applying to PG&E. So we also opposed that. So those, while the workshop report was prepared jointly, all of the parties involved provided workshop report comments and reply comments. So the reply comments were due today. And so we were involved in both of those components. So what we can look forward to really in that docket is, you know, proposed decision is going to come out very soon. And we'll be able to see which way it looks like the commission is coming down on this issue, provide comments to the proposed decision, and wait for the final decision. So we'll certainly continue to be involved here, and we're watching it very closely.
And does this mean that, sorry, you done with
No,
that piece?
please.
Does
Questions?
this mean that we then, because by law, CCA can access its energy efficiency dollars, and I know
Yes.
that's been on the table for a really long time, so I want to just acknowledge how much work's happened
Yeah.
to come to this place. It's
Yep.
huge.
Absolutely.
Is there discussion about, I mean, are we getting all of the energy efficiency funding by calculation that is due to us? Or are we, you know, in other words, how do they come up with the calculation of what we actually get to recover on that?
Yeah, well, what we had requested at the workshop was that we would be able to access all electric energy efficiency funds. So that would be funds that are collected that relate to the electricity portion of the bill. There's also gas energy efficiency funds. And so that's what we requested, and how that's allocated. Our request is that it comes all to us, and then we would be able to decide which programs to cooperate in, to partner in with PG&E or other entities, but also just gives us flexibility to run our own programs.
What's the value of that? Do you know, for MEA? What would the value of those funds be? How much?
I actually don't have a specific figure. It's a little bit complicated how
Yeah, I'm
you
sure.
arrive at the number, but
Of course.
and we also don't know how exactly that's going to pan out. So, but I'll keep the board apprised once we have more information on both the structure of how we'll be able to access energy efficiency funds, you know, process, and really what it means for us. So, if I may, one of the reasons why it's not such a simple answer is that there are a lot of funds that are in the procurement category, and these are funds that are given to the IOUs to do, you know, across very widespread programs like light bulbs at Home Depot at a discount. And so one of the issues that's under discussion is how much of those funds should we get, you know, and if we're going to be having a program in Marin County where customers can go to Home Depot, how do we decide how much we get versus the IOUs? And so that dollar amount is very difficult to determine, and there's not even a proposed formula yet.
Okay, that would be the next phase.
Yeah, how you calculate it. I mean, there are the entire issue of how CCAs are able to access energy efficiency funds is incredibly complex, and there's a lot of facets of it related to the commission, a lot of process, and there are a lot of unknowns of how CCAs really fit in. There's been a number of interpretations over sort of the history of this docket of how CCAs, it's basically changed every couple of years, how CCAs theoretically could access energy efficiency funds. But I guess the best I can say is that we're involved, we're making our voice heard, and that I'll keep you apprised on any developments, because I know that it's a priority of the board. Are there more questions on energy efficiency? No? Okay. the next item, and maybe Dawn might want to speak on this one, this relates to the CCA bond and discussions related to the process. Taking a step back, there was a settlement proposed in how the CCA bond should be calculated, and the Marin Energy Authority was not a part of those settlement discussions, and we don't agree necessarily with how the bond is calculated and what is the best way to sort of achieve fairness and also, allow CCAs to thrive. So we've been taking a number of steps here. Maybe Dawn would like to chime in on a couple of those. Yeah, and just by way of background, this is the bond that would be required to have in place in the event of an involuntary return of customers back to the IOU. So it would allow them to have access to a pool of money, really, to buy power on the spot market to cover the needs of those customers if there was an event where MEA could no longer serve customers, and it was an en masse return. This is not to cover, a few customers here, they're opting out. This is to cover an en masse return where MEA cannot serve customers. And this was under discussion for a couple of years, through 2008, 2009. The proposed calculation has been out there for about 9 months or so. In the discussion process, there really was not an effort to look at how this product could be procured on the market. And so we have undertaken some research really to find out if this is really a viable product that we could even access on the market. And our look into this issue has thus far has appeared that the way that the bond is currently calculated and set up, it's really not something that would work for MEA or for any CCA, most likely. Particularly the first few years of CCA's operation would be the most difficult to cover this type of expense. I think it's also worth noting that because the bond has not been implemented yet, there's an interim bond amount that's been set for any CCA that starts, which is $100,000, which we simply posted in cash at the time our implementation plan was approved. And so we have that currently posted. If we were posting what the bond was required right now, it would be actually less than that, but it has the potential to have a very wide variation, and could go up to $1 million or higher depending on what happened in the market. So that's what causes it to be a product that's hard to get in the market unless you're really willing to put up a whole lot of cash or have a whole lot of collateral and that sort of thing. I think it's also worth noting that the Massachusetts CCA, and as far as we can tell, other CCAs outside of California do not have this type of requirement. And furthermore, I think it's worth noting that the provider of last resort, as we saw, about 10 years ago, was actually the state, and there's not any bond posting requirement of the IOUs to cover their inability to provide power to customers. So those are some things that we're taking into account as we look at this issue. No decisions have been made yet, but we will be needing to take a position on the settlement within the next 4 to 6 weeks, most likely. So we'll keep you all posted.
Okay, questions on the bond issue or any of the filings? Is there more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course
then.
there's more. Are you kidding?
All right, okay.
Let's not stop the fun. So the next item, this really goes back to some of the statements that were made regarding the market price referent and how there's a significant imbalance there. That feeds in directly into exit fee issues. And so really the docket where that has landed and where we have a consortium working on this is in the direct access docket. And so this was the docket in which a consortium of entities that Dan Douglas, our regulatory attorney, pulled together. He pulled together direct access providers, ESPs, the CCA entities to really spearhead this issue and get it addressed. And so this is going to be addressed in the direct access docket. So there was recently released a ruling setting a pre-hearing conference. MEA and others provided a pre-hearing conference statement, and in the pre-hearing conference tomorrow, that's where some of these timing issues are going to be addressed, of the timing of how all of these issues will be addressed going forward. So we'll have more information on what the process is going to be in that docket soon, but it seems like there's movement there. And then the last item, I know you're sad that it's the last, but it's true. There was an extensive settlement that was released by the investor-owned utilities and a group of providers that provide combined heat and power, cogeneration, electricity. This is it's a very broad-reaching settlement. No CCAs or DA providers were part of this settlement. And while it resolves many issues that the IOUs and CHP providers have had, there's been a long history of issues there. What the settlement has done is it imposes costs and obligations on CCAs and DA providers, notwithstanding the fact that we were not a part of this settlement. So as soon as we saw this settlement, we brought together a consortium of folks and provided comments. And since that time, it was meant to be an expedited process. The IOUs requested that it would be an expedited process, notwithstanding the fact that a lot of relevant parties' voices were not heard at any point during the process. So at this point, this has been delayed. There will be a possible reopening of settlement discussions that might occur next week. That hasn't been totally fixed yet, but that appears to be the date. So it really relates to part of the obligation would be requiring CCAs and direct access providers, requiring them to purchase CHP, so combined heat and power resources, and that if CCAs or DAs were to not procure from those resources, that the IOU would procure those on our behalf. So that's the basic gist of that settlement. So we're going to be extensively involved.
I assume we don't want to be forced to do that.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the basis for it is the basis is not, we don't consider it to be particularly strong.
Right, okay.
So that's it on the regulatory front, unless the folks have additional comments.
Quick one, Beth. You may have covered this, but I think I read something recently where is PG&E challenging MEA's ability to award energy efficiency funds? In other words, I know that we did the $10,000 grant recently. Has there been any sort of challenge to that?
No, I mean, those are not, those don't come from the pool of sort of the funds that are collected from ratepayers specifically for those purposes that are channeled through the Public Utilities Commission. That was just our own business decision, just as if PG&E out of the goodness of their heart would like to fund non-CPUC funded energy efficiency programs, they could do so. Okay. No, there hasn't been a challenge to that, but it probably relates to the energy efficiency docket there that relates to how CCAs would be able to access public goods charge and other energy efficiency funds at the commission level.
Okay.
Other questions for Beth on any of these items? Okay, public comment?
Well, this is the thing that we've all been doing for, WEM has actually been in this energy efficiency and CCA fight for 7 years. And I can tell you a little bit about what MEA could be getting if we got our funds on our own. There's two sources of the energy efficiency funds. One is public goods charge, which is capped. The second piece is what they're calling energy efficiency procurement funds. It's still a surcharge on ratepayer bills, but the utilities determine how much they need to implement the program that they have put together, and then they impose this additional charge on us. So statewide, the charges, the PGC collects about $250 million a year, and the additional charge is something like $500 million. So it's maybe $750 million total. This is really rough figures. Currently, the 3-year budget for the Marin Energy Watch is $3.5 million that's spread over 3 years. And once upon a time, the CPUC did calculate the amount that we would get based on the way it would be if somebody else ran our program. Then they had to give us a number, and they gave us a number of $10 a person a year. So that, in other words, would be the public goods charge fund only. So basically, it would be about $30 a year per customer that we would have the ability to implement all of it. And so my calculations is that so this would end up being more closer to 3 times what the current Marin Energy Watch is receiving. Now this would be depending on what the size of the MEA territory is, so there would be some adjustment there, but we would certainly be getting a lot more than the county is getting under the Marin Energy Watch. And the really good news is that the commission made their decisions about energy efficiency right away. It was actually in the law that they had to make this decision by July 15th, 2003. The overall CCA proceeding did not even start until December of that year, and the major decision in the CCA docket came in December of 2005. So there were 2 major energy efficiency decisions between those, before the CCA docket ever, made its major decision. And what they decided in the CCA docket was that the CCAs are essentially sovereign entities, and that the commission has very, very limited authority over us. For example, the implementation plan. I mean, the CPUC could not stop the implementation plan, and they have nothing to do with overseeing how we administer or, how our implementation plan works out. I mean, they just say, good luck. And we believe that that is essentially what the statute indicates would be the case with energy efficiency. We would be deciding on our programs. You would be overseeing the programs. CPUC would not be in the picture. It would basically be the same as a publicly owned utility, the way they do their energy efficiency programs. Obviously, the utilities are extremely upset about this, but they have not, none of them have dealt with the fact that there is a CCA decision which supplants both of these energy efficiency decisions. They were never updated, but both of them say we may need to revisit this based on what we decide in the CCA proceeding and when CCAs come and ask for their funds. So now that we're asking for our funds, I think it's a whole new ballgame, but we're really going to have to fight to get what we deserve.
Hi, Bob Spofford again. I guess I'm a little surprised that we just sort of blew past the general rate case. As I read Kirby's testimony from October 6th, that thing is a dagger pointed right at the heart of this CCA. If PG&E gets that flat gen rate with the what they call the conservation incentive adjustment, we're dead. We close up shop the next day. Do you guys know something I don't know as why we're not a little more excited about this?
Well, I did try to rally everybody with my rousing presentation on regulatory affairs. But it's true that the focus of our prepared testimony and the focus of the cross-examination that's going to happen at the hearings will be exactly on this, the conservation incentive adjustment. If Kirby, if you'd like to discuss more, all of Kirby's testimony has been included in your packet so that you can take a look at what we're really honing in on. But that is, you know, a key issue. And
it's Prop 16 all over again, worse than Prop 16. We would have still been in business after Prop 16.
We're not that easy to kill. I mean, it is a serious problem, and we're fighting it, but I think we've been dead so many times that...
Okay, I just, you know, I mean, my hair was on fire after I read Kirby's testimony, and then I just heard Beth just kind of breeze through it and on to the next item, you know. Had me a little upset.
Dawn, would you like to comment? Because I know you guys are running every scenario.
Yeah, I just agree that Kirby's testimony was very compelling, and that was for a reason. We need to be compelling on this issue. And we will continue to use that voice when we're working on this issue, and we appreciate your support.
Okay. Any other public comment on this stuff? Then I will just wrap up this agenda item just to say thank you to the advocates who are here and providing rotating public comment tonight for all of your efforts on especially the energy efficiency work and working with our staff, and have appreciated the collaborative effort. I think we all have. So thanks for your years of service, and it's the needle is moving on a lot of these things. So hats off to you, Beth and Dan and all of you. Okay then, moving on to item 9, Millbank, Tweed, Hadley, McCloy contract. Dawn?
Yeah.
Was this you or Beth? I don't know.
Well, either of us can present. This agreement, we worked, as you'll recall, we worked with Millbank in the development of our energy supply contract the first time around with Shell, and we were very happy with their work product, and they did a great job. And as you sort of see from what's happening in the technical committee, we're going to have an additional, further need for legal review of energy supply contracts, PPAs, and so on and so forth. So we would like to bring them on again with a new contract, a new scope that relates specifically to this need. And so the contract amount would be $15,000 to begin. I don't think I have much more to add on that. Yeah, I would just add the first focus will be the feed-in tariff. They'll be reviewing that for us, and then any other PPAs that might come out of either bilateral discussions or that might come out of the RFP process.
Okay. Questions from the board? Okay. Any public comment on this issue?
My name is Brent Miller. I would just add, as I think I've mentioned to some of you before, that the cost of creating these contracts would be probably reduced if you followed normal industrial practice and provided your terms and conditions and your specifications to your bidders, thereby standardizing the documents you're working from as you move forward to create individual contracts. Your plan is to allow them to provide their standard to you, and that will probably be expensive. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on that item? If none, then I'll bring it back to the board. Call for a motion, please. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Carries unanimously. Item 10, a new contract with Nixon Peabody.
Yeah, so this is a legal contract with Nixon Peabody to provide services related to our structuring our financial documents. We are in the process of looking at doing a refinance, and Nixon Peabody has some specialized legal expertise that will assist us in moving that process forward, and they may also be able to provide assistance with us on future projects related to tax-exempt financing and further on down the road, bond financing. So we are bringing this initial contract, which is for a pretty limited scope, just for $10,000, to provide services related to structuring our finance agreements. And if there's a need for future services from them, then we would take that up through another contract or an addendum.
Okay.
And I think that Greg might have one additional note.
Yeah, we
here.
have one additional change here, which was noted to the board regarding the identification provision. And I just have also one more adjustment to make to that language. And this was to clarify that the identification provision survives for the applicable tort statute of limitations. And actually, the only change here is actually to simplify this a tad bit. It should read, the identification obligation created hereby shall survive the termination of this contract for the period of time that a court action in tort may be filed under the applicable statute of limitations, period. So basically says the same thing, but in few less words. Okay. So with that recommendation, we would recommend that the contract as revised be approved.
All right. May I have a motion? No, actually, we can't go there yet. Any questions on this for Dawn? Okay, public comment on this. Okay, hearing none, now I would like to call for a motion as revised.
So we're moved?
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None, motion carries. All right. Now we are to the last item, board member and staff matters. I know, it's amazing. We're going to talk to Charles about this.
Right.
New management.
I do have one item. I just wanted to alert the board and the public that our next meeting will actually be held at our new office space. Well, not at the actual office, but at the San Rafael Corporate Center, in the large room that they have at on Lindero. What's the address? The Tamalpais room. I believe it's 750 Lindero, and that'll be included in the agenda for that meeting. But just wanted everyone to have it on their radar.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or anything from the board?
Thank you.
Hearing none, thanks everybody, appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. We're adjourned.